Commander Worf wants Jadzia Dax to present her Dach Tang to General Martok. Alexander Rozhenko suddenly wants to be a warrior, and Zial's paintings remind Major Kira of Vedic Topek's early work, but Ducat says they're similar in style to Nampart Malor, the founder of Valanin School on Cardassia.
Well, that's a lot.
Welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Way to get that out. All right.
It's kind of like when you're reading stuff and don't even know what you're saying anymore. I'm like, what are all these words of the Valanin School on Cardassia?
And those are the hardest things to say when you're actually filming. Yeah. Because you'll remember the other stuff, oh, what's his name's coming here. You know that the general thing, I have to say that this person is coming from here, going there. It's just the problem is those, like, you don't know, that place doesn't exist. Yeah. And it's a tongue twister of words.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be in a different language, and we'll get to everything in just a second, but I do want to point out, shout out to LeVar Burton, because he is the guy in my mind above everybody that was able to deliver lines that made no freaking sense as if they did make sense. I mean, Star Trek is famous for its technobabble, its treknobabble. Yes. But of everybody I've ever seen, he was the one that would say these things where on paper it's nonsense, but he would just deliver them in a way that he just believed every word he was saying, and it just slid right through and felt so natural. So big shout out to him for that. Because that is the hardest thing to do.
No, I'm not aware that he was so good at that, but I do know that is the biggest challenge for any actor when they're doing these episodes. It's saying something that you either have no real conceptualization of, whether it's some scientific data, and you just don't know about peptide nucleosyphus surfaces or whatever it is.
That's another Next Generation episode. There's a neuropeptide cake with mint frosting.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
so
good. Very good.
You just, you're like, peptides. I know I studied peptides. I just don't know what the hell are peptides. So yeah. And then there's just the language of trying to, say another country's school of da-da-da-da and all this, it's not easy. And it's a skill all to itself to be able to say it as if you are familiar and comfortable with it, as if it's something that you always have. Like, hey, you didn't know the Chicago Bulls.
It's not right. It's not just memorizing lines. It's delivering these things that, like, with meaning behind them. Kind of like when they're speaking Klingon, and they can't just say the words in a gruff manner. They have to say them as if they know the meaning behind them. Right. But yeah, Cirroc, man, good knowledge without even being aware of it, saying peptides when we're talking about LeVar Burton. And I think Worf, by the way, was the one that said, with mint frosting. It's just too funny.
It's just an intuition for me. I've been around it too long, I guess.
So everybody at home, we're going to get this ship on track here. It is happy time. This is the best time of the week for us, hopefully for you as well. So sit back and enjoy. This is Deep Space Nine's Season 6, Episode 3, you might have guessed, Sons and Daughters, written by Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. Lots to talk about with those two, by the way. Directed by Jesus Salvador Trevino. October 13th, 1997. I just kind of wanted to be like one of those newscasters. They're like, yeah, we're out here in Austin, Texas, and we've got a tractor pull with Jesus Salvador Trevino. And you're like, what the heck? They kind of show off their skills. Anyway, how are you today, by the way?
I'm doing good. I am doing good. This season is really exciting. So it's a pleasure to start to watch these episodes. Every time I sit down and kind of prep myself for what's about to come, I know that I'm going to get some good television. So it's really a treat right now at this point.
Absolutely. We do want to say very quickly, if you are enjoying this as much as we are, please consider becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/the7th-rule. Look us up, find us on social media, like the videos, share them, comment, and give us 5 stars. But check us out on Patreon. Also on spring.com, you can check out all of our merchandise. Check it out. See if you want to support, even if you want to just throw $1 our way just to say, hey, I like you guys and I like what you're doing. I want to show you some support. And speaking of which, check out this awesome shirt that I'm wearing right now.
All right.
That design is called the Sisko Kid. It is made by Cirroc's sister, and you can find it on AbyssinianKiosk.com. She's got tons of really cool stuff, some Ethiopian designs and some Star Trek related stuff. Lots of really cool, awesome things. And a lot of people are getting her things and they love it. That link is in the description box below, just like our Patreon link is also in the description box below. It's party time. Let's talk about this episode.
Yeah. So I think I remember you mentioning, or you maybe have to refresh my memory, but I heard about Worf having a kid. I don't know where I heard it from before. Probably. So, and I didn't know the name of this kid up until this episode.
Alexander.
But yeah, can you give me a little refresher course on that?
Yeah, so Alexander is a whiny. No, I'm just kidding. Well, kind of. He was in like the first few seasons of Next Generation. He had a few episodes. He was so tiny. There was this tiny toddler in Klingon makeup, and it was halfway weird and halfway adorable, because especially standing next to Worf, who's a giant, and he was so small. And Deanna Troi, really liked him and kind of took care of him. Worf tried to take care of him because his mother, Kalar, who's half Klingon and half human, she died. So Worf was going to take care of him for a bit, but they butted heads.
His mother was half Klingon and half human.
Yeah, so he's a quarter human. And so the only time Worf in history has ever met his match was against his 5-year-old son. He just didn't know what to do with the guy. So the kid ended up being raised by his grandparents, or his adoptive grandparents, the people that adopted Worf, the Rozhenkos. So they live out in Russia, and that's where Worf was raised, out in Russia. And so Alexander then grew up in Russia. So presumably, if the math is correct, kind of like Zial, which is like Zial, we saw her just a couple seasons ago and she was 13. So I guess she's like 15 or 16 now, but she looks 30. Same thing with Alexander. Mathematically speaking, he should be something like 15 years old, but maybe Cardassians and Klingons grow up faster. So that's kind of how you can work it out in your mind, is to say, okay, they look older than they are because they're a different alien species. They can become adults at 12 if they want. Who knows? So that's the story there. And this is the first time we've seen him, obviously, on Deep Space Nine. And they used a different actor as well, presumably because the actor that they had probably at the time looked like a 14 or 15-year-old kid, and they needed somebody different, kind of like where they changed actresses for Zial twice. This is the third actress playing Zial because they needed somebody that was older rather than somebody that looked 13 or 15 or whatever.
Right. Okay, that's good enough backstory for me, because I didn't understand. And that, so the part where where Worf says to, talks about him not showing fighting skills and not having a warrior spirit, that's all backstory that's never been seen before, right? That was all.
Yeah, they did kind of, and it's been a long time since I've watched The Next Generation. Right now, the Trekkies are very angry with me for saying that. I do love The Next Generation. That's kind of like 1A and 1B for me as far as Deep Space Nine and Next Generation. But Worf did try to teach the kid to be a warrior, this little 4-year-old or 5-year-old, he's like trying to teach him how to scowl and be tough. And the kid just wasn't a fighter. I think the kid did end up getting into like a fight at school or something at one point, but they have jostled a bit about this, about Worf teaching him to be a warrior, a Klingon,
Okay. Well, you answered a lot of questions for me, because I wanted to know how, when he had that backstory about him. I was like, did I miss something? Or, I know they didn't have on this show.
Yeah.
So that was one thing. And the other thing was, you answered the question, obviously, but I was like, Roshenko, who is this guy? A Russian? Who let the Russian guy in on the station, on the ship? But now that you let me know that he is Russian, was raised by this Russian family, that makes a whole lot of sense. Alexander Roshenko, I swear he sounds like a tennis player.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a boxer. A boxer or a tennis player. Lepchenko.
Oh no, you're thinking of the MMA fighter. There's a really good MMA fight. Well, there's also a boxer, similar name. There's an MMA fighter who was just like the best 5-8 years ago with a similar name. Too bad we can't remember Russian names.
Well, I know there's a Lepchenko. I think he's a boxer who's like a really good boxer. I don't know his first name. But or Lomachenko. Anyways, it's
you got it.
Name.
Lomachenko. Vasily Lomachenko. And there's also a Varvara Lepchenko. And there's a lot of those.
Yeah. No, it's a very traditional name. I mean, sounding name. Grew up in a Russian neighborhood in West Hollywood, so I grew up around a lot of Russians, and they taught me how to play chess, and were really nice to me. So I know them very personally, and so that was the first thought in my mind. I was like, hey, who's this Russian Klingon dude that just showed up? Says he's got no house.
But Cirroc, I would love to play you in chess sometime. This will be fun. One of these days we'll have to play a game of chess. Should be a good time.
Right.
But so Alexander pops in, and if you're watching this for the first time, like back in the 90s, you're like, what? Worf's kid, because we knew about, he was maybe in 3 to 6 episodes or something like that. He was a known character that was a source of storyline for Worf in the first half of Next Generation. But sorry, you were going to say something?
No, the only thing I was going to say, I was going to highlight a couple of things. Number one, I was going to say that, first of all, the episode is written by Bradley Thompson and David Whittle. And so we know that this is a submitted episode, right? That was not made in-house by.
Well, these two gentlemen, I looked them up because I remember looking them up before. They do have a few story buys, which means maybe they kind of pitched but at least later on, they both became executive story editor. So after this, they have like 25 or 30 executive story editor credits. So I think maybe they became executive story editor for the entirety of season 7, or like half of season 6 and all of season 7. And before that, they had a few credits. We looked them up before because they had, and then they also went on to write and produce for Battlestar Galactica, for CSI, sci-fi show Falling Skies with Doug Jones, also The Strain, which I think Doug Jones was also in, and now For All Mankind, which is like the big one with Ronald D. Moore. So this is they're definitely a duo that has done a ton of cool sci-fi stuff together. And real quick, the episodes that they see, story by they got for Rules of Engagement. I think that was like season 2, and teleplay by they did The Assignment, and they also did Business as Usual, and now Sons and Daughters. So that's like their 4th one. But then after that, they started going into story editor and executive story editor. So it really picked up for them.
Right. So I would assume that means that they're on the lot at that point, and they're now full-time engaged in each script as opposed to just submitting and pitching.
Right.
So just wanted to highlight that because I think it's just evident of how people are able to grow in the show, as far as at least behind the camera, we see a lot of growth. When we talked to Robert Wolf, and he talked about his maturation as a writer, and towards the end here at the 5th season, when he decided to go on because he had other opportunities that were available to him as far as being a showrunner and writing his own feature film. So, just the opportunity for these different writers, as we see their careers start to bud and grow, and it's just an interesting thing to kind of observe as far as the growth in storytelling for DS9.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, I thought Robert was also an executive story editor in some episodes. Yep, I'm looking it up right now. He was an executive story editor for multiple seasons, it looks like. So his leaving after the 5th season may have opened that door. There's certainly something there, to where after 5 seasons he left and these guys kind of took over. It seems like midway through the 5th season, or midway through the 6th season, or for just the entirety of the 7th season. But
yeah,
this episode,
and then just one more thing is, clearly Ron Moore likes working with them, because they've done several things subsequently with Ron Moore. So that's another thing to just point out.
Battlestar Galactica and For All Mankind, 2 very big sci-fi shows that are Ronald D. Moore's amazing productions.
Masterpiece. Yep.
And this episode, there were some moments that I thought felt so Star Trek. And I even put that in my notes. I said, oh, that is so Star Trek. So clearly, even though this was just like their 3rd episode writing for Star Trek, they definitely understood the voice. They definitely got it.
Well, what were some of those moments?
Well, for example, where I put it in my notes towards the end was, this is something that we see all the time in Star Trek, and it gets me every time. I love it. Is you have the bad guy Klingon, the jerk Klingon. What was his name? Chitarg, I think. Yeah,
who was very excellently played. I don't know the actor's name that played him, but I thought he was
Zeller.
I liked him because he got under. He had a little bit of likability to him, where you kind of liked him, and then he kind of like, he's a bully. So I enjoyed the way he played that character, Sam Zeller. Shout out to Sam.
Yeah. So the moment that was so Star Trek to me is he's picking on the kid. Then he kind of razzes him a little bit, and we can talk a bit more about that, of course. But when Alexander says, hey, let me go, I can fix the leak. There's a plasma leak. He says, I can seal the leak. And Worf is just like, I don't know, man, it's dangerous for you. And I don't know if I can trust you. He's thinking that. And Chitarg, or whatever, is his name really Chitarg? Yeah, Chitarg. He says, I will go with him. He'll need 2 people. And that is such a Star Trek moment, which is like the guy that's kind of picking on him, the guy that kind of needs to be proven to. He says, he takes it upon himself to say, I'll take care of him. I'll take care of it. Let me put him under my wing, And that's such a Star Trek moment. It's one of those moments when you go like, it restores your faith in humanity, or in Klingons, where you say, see, even the ones that are tough, or even the ones that are bad can surprise you, and can say, hey, this kid ain't so bad. I got your back, and it's a great moment, and it's just extremely Star Trek to me.
No, that's an interesting, I noticed that moment too. And I did like it. I like the fact that he kind of, he's like, despite all our differences, despite the fact I was going to kill you yesterday or earlier today.
Yeah.
I know that this job can't be done just by you. And I think that's, kind of what you're saying about the Star Trek moment of things, is that the need for whatever it is that whatever the need is, how much people are willing to sacrifice, whether it's their ego, their life, their job. Maybe they'll get, court-martialed or whatever. They're willing to put so much on the line because of how great or whatever that need is that needs to be filled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll go to the warp core and I'll expose myself to the radiation because I know if I don't, then we're all going to die. Or that guy, he can't do it alone. He needs somebody else to go with him, even though I might not come back. So I'll go with him. And there's these really good moments of courage and selflessness, I think, that you're talking about is the Star Trek moment. I think it's a great thing to identify.
And Klingons tend to do those particular types of Star Trek things the best, which is about honor, which is about like whatever is best for the Empire, whatever, like puts aside the ego, puts aside everything else. And he's just like, yeah, I know we're just about to kill each other, but, I got your back on this. Martok, does that with Worf. They're at odds at first. Gowron, when he first shows up to Worf, whatever it was 2 seasons ago, and he's like, Worf, there are some people that call you a traitor and say that you're this or that. And he goes, I assure you, I'm not one of them, or something goofy like that, And Klingons tend to always have that moment where they're like, they have these blood feuds and these age-old battles to the death, but they're also like, hey, as long as you're a warrior and I'm a warrior, there's always that respect there. And I'm always going to work with you. And, they are, in a way, they're the most stubborn about fighting to the death, but they're also the most forgiving in that they don't let ego get in the way. They're just like, hey, I don't care if you're my mortal enemy. If it's more honorable to not kill you and to work with you, I will choose the side of honor. And it's just always an interesting, they're just such a rich culture that the writers of Star Trek have created. It's very nuanced.
Yeah. And when the episode is called Sons and Daughters, but I was thinking it could have been called Bad Dads.
Yes. A+, excellent knowledge. Excellent knowledge. Bad Dads, man. I love it.
Yeah. Our bad dad's gone good, because there's a moment, I guess they have that redemption where they do kind of this is their step up to the plate and kind of redeem yourself for the bad dad that you have been. I think it's kind of one of those things.
Yeah. Kind of like a redemption story for the bad dads in a way. That's a good point. Yeah. I mean, because that's another thing that's very Star Trek, because they have the A plot and the B plot that both either have almost the exact same theme or have themes that are in the similar realm to each other, and that's why their titles usually have meaning to both plots,
Yeah. And the other aspect of this, which I didn't really see it right away while I was watching it, but as we're discussing it now in this context, and specifically when you mentioned Alexander Rashenko's mom being half Klingon and half human, this is also a story of biracial children, essentially, right? Because we have Zial being a biracial child, and we have Alexander Rashenko being a biracial child.
Exactly.
And them having to, they have this kind of trying to find their identity, trying to, see where they fit, where they belong. You're not Klingon enough for the Klingons, and you're not human enough for the humans. And that's something that a lot of biracial people can identify with, as far as finding themselves on the outside of two races as opposed to on the inside.
And they don't, they're supposed to have 2 races, but instead they get 0. They're kind of like not 100%
right.
on one side of the fence or the other as far as how they are accepted. We got to take our quick break, but let's talk more about this, because I think this really is the heart of this one. This is really good stuff. We'll be right back on the 7th Rule, so stick around. This is good stuff. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule. We're talking about sons and daughters. It's Cirroc Lofton's big show, big moment, the Seventh Rule. Just go with it. I have no idea.
I did have a nice moment. In this episode, I had a nice moment. I did like the way I did see a little bit of more confrontation and maturity coming out of Jake, where he seemed to not be playing around as much as he usually does. And he was kind of direct with Kira and Odo, where I've never really seen him be that forceful before with authority.
You know what? Just when you were saying that, there was the okay. I'm gonna do the trivioids real quick. That's a tease. Everybody stick around. I just thought of something really good, I think, for Jake. I think we should put it on our spring store. Our online store. So let's do the trivioids very quickly. Worf and Dax sneak a makeout session. Worf wants Dax to present her Dach Tang to General Martok. He's like, you must present him with your Dach Tang so he will accept you. Like, I don't know if I approve.
I don't know about that.
Dax says blood feuds are boring, but she's only joking. What a relief. Sisko and Martok bet a barrel of blood wine as to who sets foot on Deep Space Nine first. That was great. Martok says war is more fun when you're winning, and he delivered it beautifully. Really delivered that line well.
Yes, I wrote that down as well.
Yeah, Jake wants in on Odo and Kira's resistance cell. As a reporter, Jake Sisko hears things. Quark offers Jake a job as a waiter. Zial noticed Bajorn University students whispering about her. Zial's paintings remind Major Kira of Vedic Topek's early work, blah, 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 blah. We covered that one. All right, real quick. You know, when he says, I'm a reporter, I hear things. It made me think of Tyrion Lannister on Game of Thrones. His big signature line that everybody knows is, I drink and I know things. We should get a Sisko shirt that has a Jake Sisko and he says, I report and I hear things. How perfect would that be?
Yes, Game of Thrones moment. That was my Game of Thrones moment.
Yeah, Station of Thrones. So that was great. Did you have more to say about the biracial thing? Because that was kind of the big reason that Zial was there. You know, she was kind of having problems at school. You know, she's doing really well as an artist, but you know, there's no way she would be accepted by the Cardassians, and the Bajorns accept her to her face, but they're whispering behind her back, and she knows it and she feels it, you know, and she can't feel comfortable there. It's got to be just a horrible feeling, you know.
Yeah, it is a horrible feeling, and you know, the not being accepted or feeling like you're part of anything. And you know, they delve into that a lot, and even with Worf's son, he mentions something to the effect of like, you know, I'll die and you'll be happy, you know, like,
yes,
you know, don't worry about it because I know you don't want me around anyways. Nobody wants me around, right? Nobody cares. So I think they're both kind of going through this realization and self kind of identity crossroad moment where they're saying, okay, I need to kind of find who I am. And I've been, you know, I can't fit in here. I can't fit in over there. You know, I don't have the best parental situation at home, right? My, you know, in Zial's case, my dad's the, you know, the great general / you know, terrorist, and the woman that, you know, is like my mother is also, you know, is not going to budge at all. So I think this episode was really about that, about just trying to find your place in a biracial type of world. And, you know, and this is obviously by, you know, species, I guess you can say, because you're talking about entire, you know, different aliens and whatnot. But essentially it comes down to the same thing, which is being, made up of two different cultures, having two cultural backgrounds, and having to try to find a place where you're not really fully accepted into either one. And I think this episode addresses that really nicely without hitting you over the head about preaching to you about what's the right or wrong thing to do, but more like, here's where we're at now, and I'm going to be supportive. And that's why I think it's kind of bad dads gone good. These are dads that have abandoned and have not been there for the crucial moments. I'm like, when Worf is yelling at Alexander to be a better at, with the bat lift, I was thinking, well, if you had been around long enough, where were you the last 15, 20 years? Then you could have taught me this stuff. You can't yell at me for not being good at it now all of a sudden, when you weren't around to teach me how to do it. So I think part of me was thinking that too, but no, this is a redemption moment for the dads who realize now, kind of in hindsight, the importance of having the relationship with their child and what it means.
Yeah, and Worf does get a bit fussy with him, which is so cute. He turned into such a fussy little daddy when he's like gonna help Alexander to train a bit. And he's like, "You always do this wrong," and he gets all like, "You, if you had trained, if you had done whatever," he gets all like mopey and fussy to him. He's so funny, he's such a powder. I will say that the redemption for Worf is a little bit more real than the redemption for Ducat, because Ducat's like, "Hey, I got you this dress." Remember that moment when Kira rejects the dress, and then she's like, "What was that?" He's like, "Oh, it's just a delivery." And then he's like, "For you, look at this gorgeous dress. Oh, it's not your size. That's weird." Like, it's so Worf's road to redemption is a little bit more genuine, it seems, whereas Ducat, but I do want to talk about Ducat and Kira, because I think in this episode, the most magnificently written aspect of this episode is the relationship between Ducat and Kira, because they have been flirting with this, pardon the term, flirting with this situation between Ducat and Kira for 6 seasons now. And Kira hates him forever. But every once in a while, he starts to win her over. Like when he sat on the spike and she had to pull it out of his butt, and they had their little rom-com moment in the cave. I mean, that was a romantic comedy happening in the cave, but then she catches herself. And it happened a couple more times. And now this time, because you got to figure out a way to make it believable, because otherwise she would forever resist him. But when you have Zial there's nothing to resist, because she's focused on Zial and Ducat is focused on Zial, and they're both caring about and for Zial together. And so without realizing it, that's just bringing them closer and closer together, because they're caring for the same thing that they both care about very, very much. And it's such a brilliant writing tool, whoever came up with that idea to bring them together again, great job, because it totally works. And then Kira finally realizes it, which is like, with her, it was organic. With Ducat, it was organic, but then he tried to up the ante. He tried to turn it into something more than it was. Whereas with Kira, she was like, look, I'm tolerating you because we both care about the same person. Yes, sometimes we get along because of that and agree because of that, but don't get it twisted. Don't turn this into, you're buying me an evening gown and maybe we'll do this again sometime, even when Zial's not around, kind of stuff. She's like, let's slow our roll here. Yeah. I just thought that was perfect.
We'll have dinner in my bedroom tonight. I there was a moment, and that's just, the complexity, and really, to Mark Alaimo's credit, he's fantastic at what he does when it comes to this Ducat character. He knows it very well. And what he did with this particular moment, I thought there was a moment when I said, oh, Ducat is really sincere.
Yes, like he's winning you over now.
Yeah, he actually, for a second, I actually wrote it down. Ducat seems sincere about,
What a sweetie.
about Zial and the importance of Kira in her life, right?
Mhm.
And I think in the beginning, he was like, yeah, and having you there means so much to her, and um, so I was like, oh wow, this guy really is doing it for Zial's benefit, and he really cares about her well-being, and he really cares about you know how she turns out in life, and he wants to give her the best possible advantages. But towards the end, then we start to realize, no, he's just using her in this kind of bait and switch, trying to essentially draw Kira closer to him. Because
Yeah.
that whole when he gave the dress away, I said, who's secondhand?
I
Who
put that,
regifts a dress
I put that in
that you
capital
give to
letters. I
your
said,
girl?
Ducat is a regifter.
He's a regifter. He is a regifter.
Yeah, so
He is
hard
guilty
too.
of regifting.
Yeah,
And not only the regifting, but it's kind of the regifting in the sleaziest, worst way, because you're giving a gift that you were giving to a lady that you were interested in to your daughters. That's a bad gift.
Especially if Kira ends up seeing Zial wearing the dress, she'd be like,
And-
"Oh, nice dress,
Yeah.
Zial," and then she'd look at Ducat. Did you get this for her, Gold Ducat? He'd be like, "Well, Major, doesn't it look fabulous on her? It sure does. I gotta go."
Yeah. And I was actually waiting for that moment, and they didn't do it for me, but I was waiting for it to happen. And then the other moment that plays off of this was when Quark says to Kira, you have a meeting coming up and you're not dressed in your dress uniforms, giving a little nudge to Kira that she needs to get dressed up for Ducat when he arrives, right?
Yeah, what's up with Quark being her assistant all of a sudden too?
Yeah, that was kind of, I was like, what is that? But he was nudging her and trying to get under her skin a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then Damar, when he comes and he sees her first, he's like, "You're out of uniform, Major." Like right away, he cuts right to it. I thought that's hilarious. And of course, Ducat's like, "Oh, never mind. We're celebrating." And,
yeah, he needs Damar to make him look like more of the hero to Kira, like
the good cop. Yeah. Damar plays bad cop.
Right.
Yeah.
He loves having that friction between Damar and Kira so that he could play the hero that saves the day. I mean, the best part was when Damar delivers the dress to Kira and she says, "What's this?" He's like, "It's a gift." And he's like, "For some reason," what does he say? For some reason, he thought you'd enjoy having me deliver it to you. And we're like, oh, that is such a Ducat thing to do.
Yeah. I when he said that, I was like, oh God, this is about to go bad.
And one more thing about the regifter before we change the subject on that. There was a moment.
I wrote it in my notes too. I was pissed about that. Regifting? 400 years into the future, they're still doing this?
Yeah, I hope so, man. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to give anybody anything. So, no, but there was the moment when she returns the gift back to Ducat, and shout out to Mark Alimo for the excellent comedic act. I mean, he's actually very funny on Deep Space Nine. He has some moments that are sinister, some moments that are interesting, but he has a lot of very funny moments, and he doesn't get the credit he deserves as a comedic actor. And I don't think most of his credits on IMDb and on his illustrious resume were comedic roles, but he's good at it. When he said when she returned it, and he looks down in it, and what does he say exactly? He says,
"You didn't like the dress, Major," or something like that.
That's exactly it. The look on his face when he's like, "You didn't like the dress." Like he's kind of like, what's going on here? But he's still got like this smile on his face, and he thinks, oh, it must be some misunderstanding. It must be that it didn't fit. There's got to be some reasonable explanation. Great delivery.
And Kira's response was also great. I wrote that one down too. "The dress is fine. I don't like you.
Yes. And the other great line she says when he said, well, Zial will be very disappointed. She says, she'll get over it.
Yeah.
And when you think about it, she'll be disappointed, but she'll get over it. But it'll be an easier thing to get over than Kira would have to get over if she made nice with Ducat.
Yeah, it's very good episode. They really touch on, I wrote down here, the vulnerability of parenthood. You are open to a certain level of vulnerability when you're a parent, right? Because you are protective of your child, and people can try to send a message to you through your child, right? So there's always like a level of vulnerability that you are susceptible to as a parent in general. So, you try to do your best to stay out of trouble and not cause any problems when you're with your children, right? You're just in family mode. So, and in this case, there's the vulnerability that Zial shows that Ducat has a softer side to him, and even if it's a little creepy and it's it's a little perverted, but there's still a soft spot in him. He's not completely 100% ruthless. There's got to be a 1% or more of him that is genuinely cares whether somebody lives or dies, right? Especially his daughter. And the same soft spot I felt was exposed with Worf when he saw his Alexander getting beat up, and he jumped in, and it was like he couldn't resist not jumping in. And I think Martok was very understandable of that. He was like, yeah, I know how hard it is to sit there and because I sat there and watched you get beat up by the Jemadar, and it was hard for me to watch you, as somebody I consider like a son of mine, to go through that too. So very good writing, very clever for those kinds of storylines to play out.
To add to that, Deep Space Nine especially is really good at showing the two weaknesses that most people have. And they showed it here. For Ducat, he's only got two weaknesses. I mean, well, he's got a lot of flaws like ego and pride and, megalomania and all that. But he has two weaknesses. One is Zial and the other is Major Kira. Those are his weak spots, as in, well, not weaknesses, weak spots, where that, Zial can almost convince him to do anything. And Kira could almost convince him to do anything. Love and child, right? And who else? Same thing. Worf. He's uber professional, takes his job super seriously, but he's got a weak spot when Alexander pops in. He's got a weak spot when Dax shows up. Who else have we seen this all season or all series long? Captain Sisko. He had a blind spot when Cassidy Yates was, betraying him. He's got this weak spot every time he's like, I don't want to leave Jake in this situation. And his dad's even yelling at him about it, So it's really cool. It really humanizes these people, no matter how bad they are. Like in Ducat's case, we understand why they're doing the things that they're doing, even if they're totally detrimental to their career, or even if it shows weakness, because that's the weak spot that most people have.
It's very clever. And it layers the characters. It makes it interesting. Like I said, this episode had a nice flow to it. The Klingon that we talked about earlier, who was I forgot what his name was.
Chatarg.
Chatarg.
Which is funny because a Targ is like that wild boar that runs around the Klingon home planet. It's a Targ, and this guy's name is Chatarg. So I don't know what that's supposed to insinuate, but
I don't know. Maybe it's part of his diet. But he was really good in this episode as well. I just want to say again, there were like when he delivered that line, he fights like a Ferengi.
Yes.
I was laughing. I thought it was...
You're like, you get him, man.
Yeah, I had to rewind that again.
And it's like we're back in middle school and people are talking shit to each other while they're fighting, saying yo mama jokes,
Yeah. And then he had another drop the mic moment when he looks at Worf and he says, "Are you going to fight the Jem'Hadar for him as well?"
Yeah, that was
mic drop.
That was a killer. That was the dagger right there. That was the dagger 3.
Yeah, that was it. That was like nothing else to say. Walk off the screen, and I thought that was great.
It would have almost been funny if Worf didn't realize that was kind of if Worf was like, "Well, no, of course I will not fight the." Oh, that is a joke or whatever, Or Worf.
Yeah. Oh, and then the same Chatar guy, he delivered the other thing when he said, "Unless we run into a hostile simulation program." That was another just perfect delivery, I thought. By him as this character, and these guys come in, they're just a guest starring that one episode. I don't think we've ever seen him before.
No.
But even with the makeup on, even the fact that he's a rookie Klingon, he just stepped on the set. He certainly embodied to me the spirit of a Klingon in the way that he was confrontational, the way that he spoke openly and loudly and tried to publicly shame. Those were all like dead
he
on.
Totally got it. He understood. Yeah. Okay, these are what Klingons are like. I get it. Maybe he's harnessing a biker gang in a bar or something, but this dude was a comedian too. You're right. Like, he's like, "Thank you. I'll be here all week. Tip your waitress, try the calamari," because he's killing them when he's like, "We'll make sure not to run into any more hostile, holograms or simulations." Like, you are just tearing this kid up, man.
Yeah. And also I want to say about the kid who played Alexander, we didn't talk much about him, but he did a good job for playing this kind of, shy, not sure of himself. He delivered those emotions well too, I thought. I mean, at first I was like, "Who is this wimpy kid? How the hell does he? How does he get to stand next to these soldiers?" But when he defended himself at the in the mess hall when he was eating, and he defended himself by throwing the food on the guy.
Yeah,
I was like, well, at least he's got some kind of
heart
backbone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got some kind of backbone. He's not a complete wimp or scaredy cat, because he's not afraid of conflict or confrontation. He went in, he kind of initiated that fight, in my opinion. So I was like, oh, well, he's not as soft as I thought he was, but he did talk soft when it was time for him to. And there was a kind of a natural father-son feel to how he was approaching the strictness of his parent. He was kind of approaching that with the kind of, I thought, nice reservation.
Yeah, and when he arrived, they were showing the desperation and the dire straits of what's going on in the war, because they got a lot of injuries and a lot of deaths. So Martok said he asked for 15 replacement crew members, and he got 5. And it was a ragtag bunch. There was an old dude in there. There's some kid in there. He's like, he got the bad news bears, basically.
Yeah.
So he's thinking like, this is what we've got, and that's showing that they're losing the war, and that's why he even says, war is so much more fun when you're winning, or whatever it is. I already forgot what he said.
That's the one. Yeah. And it was funny because I wrote that line down as well. War is more fun when you're winning. And that actually came on the heels of the Dax scene with Worf. And he says, it's going to be very difficult to be married to you, or something like that. and she says, yeah, it won't be easy, but it will be fun. And I thought, oh, they just used fun twice, right? My ear picks up on words when they're used in repetition. So she said it won't be easy, but it'll be fun. And right after that, Martok says war is more fun when you're winning. So it's like, oh, okay, fun. Yeah.
Interesting. One more line from Chittarg, the comedian, Chittarg Chappelle. He said, oh, maybe you'd prefer a earth beverage, maybe a nice root beer with a lump of ice cream in it, or what do you say? A chunk of ice cream or a lump? Yeah. Prefer a glass of root beer with a nice lump of ice cream in it. Ugh. He's slaying him, man. He's just
he was dropping bombs everywhere. I was really surprised that Worf let him live. I must kill you.
Yeah, well, he's that guy got. They need a medic.
I mean,
he's getting a lot of sick
then
burns.
The moment where he said, oh, he dropped the microphone again when he said, "Yeah, we're trying to open this door because you're an idiot."
He locked himself out.
When he dropped that line too, I was like, who is this guy, man? Give him his own show, man.
give that man a spinoff. The Chittarg and Alexander show.
No. Yeah, it was that good.
So we do have to go to the free-for-all now, everybody at home. So be sure to stick around a little longer for that. We've just got a minute left. We'll see what their favorite Chittarg one-liner was. Maybe that'll be a fun question to ask, except people listening in are like, we've already heard all the jokes. Move on. We do want to give a very special thanks to Carmen, aka Skillet, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Bill Victor Arucan, Yvette Blackmon, Homer Frizzell out somewhere in the Big Apple, Eve England out in Wales, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Titus Mohler, Tim Baum, Susan V. Gruner, John Mann, Mark Rocco, Darlena Marie, and Rex A. Wood. Also, there was a
NAM?
There was a NAM. Actually, we'll see if the free-for-allers can get it because we've already mentioned it. Okay. And there was also a Trekkian name. It's a little bit of a different one. He said they will have the reflexes of a Norpin falcon. So I guess that means he'll slow him down or something.
Yeah, my dad used to drive a Norpin Falcon in the 70s.
A 79 purple Norpin Falcon.
Norpin Falcon.
Nice. All right, so everybody at home, stick around. It's time for the free-for-all. We'll be right back. Always remember the 7th rule.
Welcome to the free-for-all. Today we are joined by the fabulous TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, the dazzling Dr. Susan B. Gruner from Florida, the ultimate
orange is the new black
Scotch. Down in the East Coast.
Over the East Coast.
Who's Scott?
Homer Freezy out in New Easy. I forgot your switcheroo, TJ, from last week, but that was fun.
Aren't you in New Orleans?
Today it's New Orleans.
Today,
wow.
Wow.
Which I think is the big easy.
Yeah, she said the New Easy. That was close.
Oh, that worked.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
And the always energetic Dr. Anne-Marie Segal out in the Big Apple, and our hosts always, Cirroc, Lofton, the fabulous, and Ryan T. Husk, the glorious, and me, Melissa Longo.
All right.
I thought Cirroc was glorious and I was fabulous. Did we get that mixed up?
We can switch it.
I guess.
Glorious.
She said glorious, Ryan. You missed the in part.
Oh, my bad. Okay, so today we're talking a bit more about, boy, oh boy, sons and daughters, which is a pretty crazy name because when you first see that name, you think, oh, maybe it's about Jake and Nog, but it really was not. It was about a son and a daughter specifically. Do you anybody have any fun thoughts to say about this episode? Oh, wait a minute. Whoa. We forgot so many things, Cirroc. We got so into this thing. We didn't cover anything. Like, first of all, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to say this was a 7.9. Maybe an 8. 7, 9, 8.
Anybody else have any guesses on this one that doesn't already know?
10.
I tend it.
You tendy?
Yeah.
You tended?
Ended it.
Please, the intendee.
The answer is, the intendee. The answer is 7.1, which is not
no.
fair. Yeah.
And people were
I think
just
people were mad at Worf.
See?
I see something coming.
This-
It's the
I
time.
forgot this.
Oh, man.
It's time for the nitpick number 1. That batlet that Alexander was training with was hella bent on one side.
Oh, okay.
He already had
My
the deck
gosh.
stacked against him anyway.
Okay.
Why do you have a bent batlet?
Ugh,
And then-
I hate how like
I wouldn't have
Okay.
noticed if Martok hadn't gone, it's a fine blade. It's perfectly balanced. I was like, no, I can see it's from the drop, whatever the prop was from the drop, probably. Anyway, what were you saying, Anne-Marie?
I just hate how Alexander has to get himself in like a life or death situation to win back Worf's love. In this again, after we already saw that in TNG. Like,
Yeah.
Oh,
love
Worf.
him.
Yeah, no spoilers. But yeah. Did any of you catch the NAMs today? Okay, everybody that's just listening and people are just thinking, you didn't lose us. You didn't lose
Well,
the connection.
I'm trying to like remember if a different Wayun was mentioned.
Mm-mm.
After like the other week, you mentioned like an earlier Wayun. I thought that was like a great call.
It was in the Klingon
Okay.
storyline.
Oh, legendary.
Auron.
Was he mentioned? I didn't catch that, if so.
No, who is it?
No,
Kalar.
Oh no, that was a different episode.
Oh.
Oh, the Rashenkos.
yes, the
Rashenko's his
Rashenkos.
mom.
Oh yes.
Love them.
Wait,
yeah.
but
Back to Earth. Get out of here, kid.
But was Kalar mentioned too? She may have been.
Yeah. He said she died suddenly when he was young.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he said
the
it
name.
to Martok, right?
Right.
Yeah, he told him about it.
Yeah, but they didn't mention the Rozhenkos by name either. They're just like, how are your grandparents
no
doing?
names.
How are Nana and Peepaw doing or whatever?
Our parents were in good health when I left them.
Yeah, right. Okay. Anyway, so moving on from that, TJ, do you have any thoughts on this episode? I don't know if you've seen it recently.
I have, and I thought there were so many good lines. I don't know if they were covered before, but I was laughing when Chitarik on the bridge says, "Keep a close watch. There may be more hostile simulations." And I, laughed when Martok said, "Oh, he wouldn't have killed him. He might have cut him up a little bit."
Yeah,
Broke
broke
his
his bone.
He wasn't gonna kill him.
It's like, wow.
Why was his name
Yeah.
Chitarg anyway? Isn't that?
The dog, yeah.
Yeah.
Named after a Targ, man.
Oh,
Poor guy. You got to have a good
Like
sense of humor
Chitarg.
growing up like that. Yeah, you got to have a good sense of humor with that
Boy
name.
named Sue problem. Yeah, it's the same thing.
And I thought Alexander delivered a great performance when he was talking to Worf and he said, "You call yourself my father, but you haven't tried to see me or talk to me in 5 years. I wasn't the kind of son you wanted, so you pretended that you had no son. You
Yeah.
never accepted me. You abandoned me." And then I think Michael Dorn also played well off of that with his reaction, like wow, kid's not lying.
No lies detected. Well said by the party gorn, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri.
They were just in like such a good place at the end of TNG. It's hard to watch.
It is because we're always cheering for Worf, so we kind of got Worf's back, but we also, as the audience knows, what, kid ain't lying.
I know, it was like 2 steps forward, another step back.
Yeah, enjoyed the daughter side of the storyline too, with Kira kind of getting sucked in again, and then realizing, wait a minute, this is not happening. I'm not going there, with Ducat.
Easy to mix up.
That was so good, though.
Especially with that hot dress.
You say that prom dress?
That hot dress.
Oh,
I love that dress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ducat might give it to you.
It was
He's
just
handing
so
it to anybody nowadays.
Oh,
I
it was just
know.
so hard.
Oh, horrible. Oh,
What a total schmuck he is.
It was so
Yes.
great. His face where you could see the light bulb go. I'll just get
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I bought this for you.
Like, that might be his worst offense in my mind.
Mm.
He has to know that at
Or
some point
Zio.
Kira's gonna say, "Hey, I gave this dress back to your dad because I was mad."
Yep.
And
And then
it's like, what? No,
Zial is
that
going
was
to
my
give it
dress.
back.
Yeah.
And then Ducat's going to be like, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, did you say you like this dress? I got it for
He has like 5 other daughters to punish.
Why can't I find that dress on eBay?
you. Well, Sue, do you have any thoughts about this episode? Speaking of which.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. I really liked, because of all of you, I pay attention to things more than I used to, like the lighting. I keep saying that. I appreciated the way that they lit that Klingon ship. It was perfect Klingon vibe in that ship. I kept thinking it's kind of jagged, the lighting. They had those, well, you know what it looked like. And I thought it perfectly describes what life must be like on a Klingon ship. It's completely different than on a Federation starship, which is well lit and kind of
Colorful.
bluish maybe. But I appreciated that. And I thought, I hate to say, I thought the makeup was great, but man, those people that put on that makeup, spending hours in makeup, I thought about that, even though it has obviously nothing to do with the acting. But I wouldn't want to be on a Klingon ship. And that's a nitpick. Did Alexander really choose? He's not a warrior. Did he do that for his father? I'm still confused a little bit about that. Did he deliberately do that to be with his dad? Because that makes 0 sense.
I think he went to the Ratarn because he heard Ch'Targ was a great one-line comedian. Like he's like, I gotta get roasted by this guy. I heard it's to die for. Cirroc and I were
The
very
roast of
pleased.
Shenko.
Yeah.
That could have
Roast
been
of
another
Shenko.
title.
Yeah, the roast of
Did
Ratarn.
I miss something? What made him decide all of a sudden he's in wherever they are in Moscow or wherever they live?
Yeah,
Decide,
okay.
I want to be on a Klingon bird of prey.
A little bit of leap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a huge leap.
Mm.
Yeah, did he say anything at any point? Why it came, other than he wanted to
It just
prove to his
hasn't been
dad that he
like-
was wrong about him?
His grandparents were already getting old, so my headcanon is that it was like getting hard to live with them in the Ukraine or wherever it is. But I mean, things must have been so hard for him, especially like as the Klingons and Federation like weren't getting along a few seasons ago.
They were just at war, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also sometimes when they're seeing, they see their somebody's country is being attacked or in a battle, they want to go help it, and maybe he was seeing that he was seeing a
That's true.
commercial from the Klingon Empire while he's watching Sally Jesse Raphael or whatever.
That's true.
And there's a commercial that says, do you want to restore honor to your house? come join the battle against the ugly Jem'Hadar or whatever. He's like, I'll do it, and I'll piss off my dad in the process.
Take my bent bafflet and run out there.
Were you saying something, Anne-Marie?
It's just so sad. And like, I don't know. It hurts
very
watching
sad.
Alexander have a sad life when he had such a hard time acclimating to the Enterprise.
What about you, Melissa? Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean, I've read a lot that people don't like Alexander very much at all. But I think it's so unfair because he didn't really have the upbringing of a Klingon. And I can see him wanting to try to connect to that part of him because he is 3/4 Klingon, you know. So he would want to connect to his roots, to, you know, so to say, but he doesn't have the tools to do that. So I mean, he's trying to be a Klingon, true to himself, with human tools. You know, in the cultures between human beings and Klingons are vastly different. So it's a difficult road to walk. And I think that he may have told himself he wasn't doing it for his father, but most kids are looking for the approval or at least the attention of their parent.
Yeah.
So subconsciously he could have been doing that too. So I feel bad for Alexander because as opposed to Sisko, Worf is a pretty crappy father. And I love Worf, but he dropped the ball as a parent many times.
It is a parent. Yeah. Cirroc said
I
that
have
the
another
title.
nitpick.
Oh, sorry.
by the way.
Cirroc said the title of this episode should have been called Bad Dads. How great is that?
Bad dad.
What were you saying, Sue? Sorry.
How did those Klingons and the bird of prey know about root beer?
Yeah.
How would
Ice
your
cream in
average
it,
everyday
too.
Klingon know about root beer?
It's
A
probably
little
their
chunk of ice
favorite
cream.
joke
Probably.
about humans.
Yeah, it must be a joke.
They probably docked at Deep Space Nine because Martok is the head of the ship, and they've
point.
probably been at Quark's, who knows plenty about root beer.
Mm-hmm. What if
because
that
of
was not the
Federation.
first time? Yeah. If that's like Quark's thing to everybody that's not human, like, hey, check this junk out that they drink. Aren't they
Exactly.
gross? Like Garrett was just
Garrett
one of many.
Try it.
That's his bit.
Yeah.
It's his bit that he's got. We come in there.
Now, Goldu
Out.
Scott, what are your thoughts on this episode, by the way? Cool shirt, too.
One goal to another.
I never I never want to play any kind of game where bluffing is involved with Worf, because when Alexander walks out, his face doesn't change. Like, he looks across, was there like 5 or 6 of them came on?
Yeah,
And he just looks across him, and it's like, did he not recognize him? He didn't even do like a double take, like oh, what's going on? I mean, nothing. He just completely dead-faced the entire time. And then even for Martok to bring it up later, like, man, we were in prison together, man. I invited you into my house, and you didn't tell me that you had a guest.
That part's insane.
Like,
and he has a different
yeah.
last. He's going by Worf's old last name. Like, Worf didn't even bother telling him they changed houses. And
Is there's some kind of like there's no paperwork for the Klingon house when you move in. He's like, you got any dependents? No, I don't have any dependents.
horrible.
That's like he
How did he
changed
do that?
addresses without telling his own kid.
He did everything.
Just ship him off to Russia.
Cell
Yeah, let
phone.
him go do that. And it's also it's not fair at the same time to judge anybody against Sisko or O'Brien or even Rom as far as dads on the show. So I mean, he just he's better than Ducat is. So he's got that going for him more fair.
Well,
I thought
mean,
Ducat
at
was the
least
best
Ducat
dad.
tries to reach out to his daughter and
He does try.
tries to develop a relationship with his daughter. Worf pretty much wrote Alexander off.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's
I mean, he didn't kill her when he was gonna, and he didn't kill her. So
He almost killed her though. That was pretty.
and then he decided not to. So
that was nice of
That's
him.
always
That was-
good.
What a sweetie.
That's always
Maybe.
It's a sign of a good dad when he
Aw.
doesn't kill you.
Father's
I mean,
Day
so-
card. Thanks for not killing me, Dad. Loves the all.
Also, I don't know. I'm not sure if I remember this clearly or not, but during the movies after TNG, weren't they in Sol, like in Earth's solar system at some point? Like within that, they weren't out in deep space the whole time and like First Contact and everything, right? Was that all post? So, I mean, he's in the solar system when his kid's on Earth, so he can't just like swing by in these ships that go faster than light. You know,
well, First Contact was the past, though.
Yeah, First Contact was way back, so we could leave his kid a note where he knows, he's going to be.
But there was the wedding scene. There was the wedding scene.
Yeah, that was on Earth, wasn't it?
Also,
you need a visa to go to Russia too.
That's what it was. It was too much. It was again paperwork. He's not about paperwork. He doesn't want to play with dependent.
He's not about paperwork.
He kind of like ditched
had
her,
no idea
like,
where his passport
Deanna.
was.
And then that's not really fair because like it wasn't Alexander's choice to be so much a part of that failed relationship. All right.
What else you got for us, Anne Marie?
But Worf does kind of touch upon that a little bit. He was like, he says, "I live a warrior's life." Like he basically is telling him, "I already told you."
I'm married to the sea, kid. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I'm out, man.
Well, see, I drew that comparison too because I mean, if you think about it, Sisko could have kind of had the same excuse. I'm a Starfleet officer. I'm a commander. I'm too busy to be dealing with, little Jake. I should probably send him off to live with his grandpa in New Orleans.
Well,
Peel
there's
some
a special
potatoes.
thing about
On the
Sisko
station.
too. Like he doesn't need a wife or like a girlfriend or someone like in his ear reminding him to be a good dad. He just does it.
Ooh. I got some tea right here. Let's sip this tea.
Uh-oh. Don't mess with Amber B.
I have a butt.
All
I have
it
a butt
is.
here.
We all
But-
do, Sue.
It's like a Jerry Springer episode.
Worf didn't know he had a son
The beginning.
initially. So I'm not
Okay.
saying I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying he didn't know that,
I give him credit for the hard.
So are
the
you saying
hard
he should go on
beginning.
Maury?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You
He should
are
go on
not the
Maury.
part
Like-
of war.
All right.
This little boy suddenly shows up, and I don't know how I would react if
It'd be pretty
I-
shocking.
I was
Some
in-
Klingon kid showed up.
saying,
You're my dad.
yeah.
He should have gone on Mari. Well, Homer, why don't you bring us home? Actually, we usually start with you on these observations, but today we're closing with you.
That's fine. So I appreciated the title of this episode, Sons and Daughters, and not just the son and the daughter, but also the mixed crew of Klingons that show up, and talking about the house that they're from. I thought, just to jump ahead to the ending, I thought it was way, way, way too easy. Hey, join the House of Martok. You just have to slice your hand and you're in, and that solves all the problems, and we're not going to see you on the show ever again. Goodbye. I didn't like that. I really, as others have said, that smarminess or what.
That's okay. That's okay. We're still waiting. I heard a Price is
apologies.
Right.
You can spell smarminess
Hey, you're back.
for us.
I sure can. I would spell it with an S and end it with an S.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Perfect.
Then.
There's a bunch
That
of
works
stuff
for
in the middle, MARMINES in between there.
Okay.
Survey
That
says.
works.
Yeah. I also think one last thing. I think that they missed out by making Alexander such a runt of the litter type. I think it would have been cooler if he had been as big as Worf, but still not inclined to become a warrior. So
Like
I think
when-
they sort of fed into a stereotype.
Yep.
Interesting. Kind of like when Jake was being played by Tony Todd and he ended up being bigger than his dad, but still had a different spirit than his. He wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of that, Homer, and say that I was waiting for the redemptive moment for Alexander. I was waiting for him to save the day, right? Like I was like, okay, well, he's a real mess up. He screws everything up, but there's going to come a time when his screw up is going to work out, or it'll save their lives. And didn't give him that much of a redemptive moment. They just made him look like he locks himself in the, they're in the middle of the, and he's locking himself. Hey, somebody open the bathroom, I'm locked in here. It's like,
but you know what? He had the courage to go down there.
Yeah.
He had the courage to go down there.
No,
he volunteered for that.
And he had the courage to show up on the ship altogether in general.
Yeah,
in the Civil War. So he has courage, but I was hoping that courage would pay off in some type of redemptive storyline where his courage redeems him and he's now accepted by people because they see that even though he messes things up here and there, that he has good intentions, that he is courageous, that he's willing to stand up and confront different issues. I just thought there was a moment that they missed out on. They could have played him kind of saving the day. This was a perfect type of, we mentioned Jake, Nor the Battle to the Strong, where Jake kind of saves the day, even though he's faced with this dilemma of fear and courage at the same time. I felt like that could have been his storyline as well. He could have been faced with a moment where his fear and his stupidity or his mess ups actually turn out to be a good thing. So yeah, I think that was a missed opportunity, especially if you're gonna not see the character anymore. Yeah. You don't want to leave him off as just being a bumbling idiot, because then he should be on lower decks.
Well, but I do think it was more of why they didn't do that is because it was more of a growing moment for Worf rather than Alexander, in that Worf is learning to accept him for who he is and not what he expects him to be, and not the idea that Worf has in his head that what his son should be. And we do see Alexander again very soon.
Well, and also now we do know that he's going to be the first person that they call when they have any simulations that need to be battled. So he's definitely proven his worth there. We do have to run. Thank you all for joining us on the Free for All. Sue, Melissa, Goldu Scott, Homer Freezy, and TJ Jackson-Bey. For myself, for Cirroc Lofton, and for the coolest guy ever, Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all for joining us, and always remember the 7th rule.